can we talk about scheduling? Because I've just received an email from Surrey, the chairman, Ollie Slipper. There's a video on the Surrey YouTube page, which basically highlights Surrey's reasoning for wanting to maintain a 14-game championship. George, we were speaking off air. You've released a piece in the Cricketer mag today, which suggests that maybe Nottinghamshire, who some felt might have been in favour of the 13-match county championship, they might be swayed by their members who don't want a reduction in numbers of games. So where are we? It's looking more and more likely that we're just going to stay where we are, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So a week or so ago, those who are proposing the 13-game system thought they had 11 firm votes for 13 and that there were 4 or so open for persuasion. You need 12 to bring in any change, okay? I think now there is a growing acceptance that most traditional county members don't want to cut. And there's a context to that, which I can go into if you want me to. I will very briefly, which is that if you listen to, say, John Philby or Tim Bostock, that's the Sussex and Durham chairs, respectively, CEO, sorry, Bostock, you could quite easily be persuaded by the benefits of 13 games, and there are some. I say this as someone who doesn't, I'm not actually in favour of any of the proposals, but if you're talking about best v best and jeopardy, I think it probably increases both of those. I would also say that the 14-game system, I'm no fan of. Don't think it's ever been great. There are all sorts of problems with it in that the integrity of the competition, you don't necessarily play the same sides twice, and you might win a narrow championship because of the draw. So I don't think that's great. So if you talk to those guys, I think that most people would think, you know what, they've got the best intentions at heart. Whether you agree with them or not, I respect where they're coming from, and you could have a very civil debate. In fact, John Philby went on Sussex stream this week, and he was probably on for about an hour, explaining it in a very uncular sort of Uncle John bedside manner, and very reasonable. But the problem you have is that the level of mistrust between county members and the authorities is very great and has been earned, not least by the way that the 100 was imposed upon them 10 years ago, whatever it was, a few years ago. And the bad blood from that hasn't been cleared up because the repercussions haven't been resolved, have they? So there's a lack of trust, and that's the key thing. So as soon as anyone hears about a reduction in the county schedule, their hackles are up and they immediately think you're just trying to take something from us.
Which they are, kind of.
Sort of, yes. Some of them are. I think that.
Well, you're paying the same amount for less and getting less.
Well,
and
you're potentially paying the same amount for less.
And you're already getting less.
Well, just on that, obviously with a 13-game system, you could end up having the same amount of championship cricket. They've lost 2 blast games and they've been offered extra Metro 50-over games. So it's a slightly complex package. And very much there is a group who just want to cut, make the fixture list streamlined. You could say they might even be doing it with the best of intentions. I suspect there are only 1 or 2 counties who genuinely disrespect the championship. I think it is as few as that. But some of the messaging early on, I think Nick's spoken about it before. The PCA messaging didn't come across as clearly as it should have done. They have a legit point about player workload, injury prevention, travel. Those are all sensible points that need to be respected. It came across as them just wanting to cut, to play less. And I don't think that's a particularly fair reflection. So, in context, we're at the end of the bloody season and we don't know what everyone's playing for. We don't know. I was at New Road yesterday. Oh, and you're thinking, oh, well, that's Worcestershire relegated. Except we don't know that there is relegation. And it's not just us not knowing. Nobody knows because they actually haven't decided. It's not that we're just not reporting it. They don't know. That is amateurish. Now, apparently I said that this was somewhat chaotic a week or so ago and it annoyed people on the PGC. Mate, it's the middle of September. It is chaos.
2 months past their own deadline.
It is chaos. And by the way, 2 months ago was too late. You have to start the season knowing what you're playing for. You wouldn't do this in a village competition. So I think there is a growing realization that it might make sense to defer the vote and the opinion and any changes, and just take a bit of pressure off and keep talking about it, and keep talking about it till Christmas, and then bring in any change ahead of 2027. The downside of that is it feels very much as if those who want to cut just keep saying we'll have a vote until we get the result we want. And actually, by the timetable that we had going into this, those who didn't want a cut have won. I don't think there's any, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, or anybody, I don't think there's any county which has been canvassed where the members have said, yeah, let's cut.
No, but I was going to say, I think as soon as you took this to members, you were never going to get that because the whole the whole reason this is so complicated is you've got different stakeholders who obviously want different things. You know, there was never and members, supporters are all, you know, if you treat for a second, I'm not saying they are, but if you treat them for a second as season ticket holders, essentially, no football fan's gonna say, I want fewer, but fewer games for my money, are they? Like, so as soon as you go to the members, you're going to get one answer. As soon as you go to the players,
Well, I don't know about that. I'm going to give, I mean, you may well be right, but I'm just going to give members a little bit more credit and say, if
I
they
think
were
people can
given,
understand why there is appetite for reduction, but I don't. And actually, just one thing on you mentioned John Philby. I thought he was really good
very,
particularly actually in what he said on the record to our colleague Mel Farrell. You can read this on our website. He made a really good point, and a point that's not been made enough. And I know it's a point that Durham wanted to stress as well. As you said earlier, it's not about. This has been framed. Once you call it a cut, you make this very adversarial. So you've got people who want more, and you've got people who want less, and suddenly it becomes, us and them, more or less. What this has not been enough about is improving something that is not very good. The reason everyone agreed to sit down around a table initially, the 18 counties, was because everyone agreed that the status quo is rubbish. No one agreed to sit. They didn't all agree to sit down because they think the
yeah,
status
and I
quo
think
is
we
too
need
much
to remember
cricket.
that.
So
We
everyone
need,
sat down initially because it was rubbish. And if they come out of this and everyone gets up from the table and goes, right, well, we sat down because it was rubbish and we've agreed at the end of it to to stick with the rubbish, then frankly, everyone's failed. Because the point that Philly makes, I think, is a really valuable one, is that by sticking at 14 and given the direction of travel for the game more widely, you kick the can down the road to a more dangerous place, which is in 3, 4, 5 years' time, when this existing bit through to 2031 comes to an end, and they go and they say in 2029, do you know what? Maybe there is quite a good argument now for 10 games because we've stuck with something that isn't very good, that people think for valid reasons needs reducing. If you don't do it now, you make the next batch of talks, I think, more extreme because there could well be a time in 5 years' time where there is less appetite for championship cricket or for test cricket or for first class cricket, and that then becomes a 10-game competition. Whereas at least if you make an effort to change now, everyone gives a new system time to bed in. There won't be so much, people won't be so patient if we stick with what we already have when everyone's already accepting that what we already have is not very good.
okay, just to complete the point I was going to make, I would respect the county supporters a lot more than they are being, because I think they've kept the game going in lots of times. And it's not very long, remember, since a huge amount of them gave their county membership fees to prop clubs up during COVID. So they've earned the respect that they don't always get, particularly from people who don't really go to county cricket and dismiss them as a handbrake on change and stuff. Anyway, I think if they were given the time and space and reflection time to consider these options, they wouldn't be as anti the 13-game proposal as is the case right now. And I say again, there is a lot of mistrust there. Now, I'm fortunate in that I get to speak to a lot of the chairs and chief executives, and I know that, say, Philby and Bostock, for example, I believe in their good intentions. In fact, I'm sure of them. I'm not a fan of 13, I have to say. But I can see in some areas it's better than 14. And I would think that if there is time to openly talk to the counties, what happened at Lancashire? Were they told about the 14-game proposal? Well, not really. Were they told about 13 games? No, they haven't had the chance to discuss that. Treat them like adults and they'll behave like them. The thing is, it's like MPs making mistakes with their tax payments. Have you noticed they never overpay? Have you noticed that? Whenever there's a
Jeremy Corbyn did.
well, that's
He was called a tax dodger. He'd overpaid his tax.
interesting. I didn't know
But
that.
the point you make is right.
The point I think is still valid. It's very rare that people overpay in the same way that they're talking about changes to the domestic schedule. I think it would have been nice if they talked about going back to 16. It's the only way you can actually have integrity in the system is everyone plays everyone home and away. England went to #1 in the world when they were playing that system. If we're really talking about best be best, if we're really talking about sporting integrity, that should have been on the table. And that's why there's a lack of trust. But the members, these are people who have loved cricket, who go to cricket, who put money into both the county memberships, extra ticket sales, England ticket sales, Sky subs. And they have actually organised themselves in such a way that they have stopped the Strauss review. It looks like they're going to stop this review as well. Respect them. Work with them. Democracy is awful in lots of ways, but it's better than the alternative. And that's what we're seeing here. So I think maybe just take the time pressure off and accept that there has to be more dialogue. Equally, though, at the end of that, you have to accept that if you have a debate and a vote, you might lose.